Ever get that feeling, like certain stories just kind of get under your skin, the ones that make you think twice about what might be lurking in the shadows?
Oh, absolutely. Those mysteries that just linger, the ones that keep you up at night.
Exactly. And today we're going deep on one of those, a real head scratcher that's been making waves lately, especially in the paranormal world. It's the whole Hexham Heads thing, and specifically this rediscovered BBC nationwide report that everyone thought was lost forever.
Yeah, that's got everyone buzzing, hasn't it? The Hexham Heads. Talk about a story that's been whispered about in hushed tones for, what, decades now?
Seriously, it's one of those classic paranormal tales that just won't go away. And for all you listeners out there who love a good mystery, a tale of the unexplained, well, buckle up, because this one's a doozy.
Oh, it's a wild ride for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
picture this. Two weird stone heads just dug up by a couple of kids playing in their garden. Back in the early 70s in a place called Hexham, Northumberland.
Hexham, yeah. You'd think it'd just be some quirky local legend, right? But nope, this thing spiraled into a whole series of creepy events.
Creepy doesn't even cover it. Some would say downright terrifying. But that's what we're here for, right? To untangle the threads of this whole thing. And luckily, we've got two amazing resources to help us along the way.
We do. First, there's the recovered audio from that BBC nationwide report. I mean, who knew it even existed anymore? And then there's this awesome deep dive that the tape library did on YouTube called The Disturbing True Horror of the Hexham Heads.
Between those two, we should be able to piece together what really went down. I mean, what actually happened. What were the weird events linked to these heads? And what are the theories people have come up with over the years? I mean, why does this story stick around?
That's the big question, isn't it? Why does it still grab us after all this time? So for you listeners, think of this as a deep dive into the deep dive. We'll try to give you the full picture, drawing from both these sources, and hopefully making some sense of this whole paranormal puzzle.
Yeah, no stone left unturned. And a good place to start, I think, is at the very beginning, the discovery itself.
Yeah, let's rewind back to late 1971, maybe early 72. The tape library seems to think it was around that time. We've got two young brothers, Colin and Leslie Robson, probably bored out of their minds, doing what kids do best.
Digging in the garden.
Yep. Might have started out as helping with the weeds, who knows. The kids, they're going to dig, right?
They did. So Colin, he's digging away about 2 feet down, and his spade hits something hard, pulls it out, and it's this round thing about the size and weight of a cricket ball, they say.
Imagine that, covered in dirt.
He brushes it off, and it's a head.
A head, right there in the garden. And get this, right before all this, Colin had made a head out of plaster of Paris for a school art project.
No way! Seriously?
Yeah, and people said it was kind of creepy looking. Even his headmaster called it ugly. Talk about foreshadowing, right?
Whoa, that's wild.
But anyway, back to the garden. Leslie, not to be outdone by his brother, keeps digging. And wouldn't you know it, just 6 inches below the first head, he finds another one.
2-for-1 deal on creepy heads in the backyard. You can't make this stuff up.
Nope. And the descriptions of these heads, well, they're important because they kind of set the scene for everything that comes after. From what the YouTube video says, one was like a skull, kind of masculine, with this Celtic hairstyle carved into it.
Right, like something straight out of history. And the other one?
More rounded, more feminine. Some people called it the hag. Oh, and they both had these weird neck-like things, almost like tendons, which were later sawn off when people were studying them.
Tendons. That's creepy.
Right. So the boys, instead of running straight to their parents who were at work, they go next door.
To their neighbor.
Yeah, Nellie Dodd. Show her these strange heads they found. I can't imagine her reaction.
I wouldn't want to be her, that's for sure. What does she say?
Well, apparently she was pretty spooked. Suggested they take them to the Hexham Abbey. See if they could figure out what they were.
Smart thinking.
So off they went, told their mom they were headed to the Abbey with 2 old stone heads, like it was an everyday thing. And a priest there takes the heads, says he'll do some digging, see what he can learn.
History buff, maybe?
But oh boy, no one knew what they were in for. Things were about to get real strange, real fast. And it all starts right next door with Nellie.
Yeah, a few nights after the boys find the heads, Nellie Dodd has this terrifying experience. Both the BBC report and the YouTube video talk about it. Chilling stuff. Starts with her daughters. They shared a room, and they'd been hearing this weird sound at night, like pitter-patter of feet.
Tiny footsteps, huh? Kids got active imaginations.
Right, that's what Nellie thought, too. Figured it was just Set falling down the chimney.
But then,
On this particular night, her daughter Marie, she was sick, ear infection. Poor kid. Nellie finally gets her settled. Then her son Trevor comes in, freaked out. Says something touched his leg in his room.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
In the dark. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And Trevor shared a room with his younger brother, Brian. And Brian later said he felt something too, like a hand stroking his hair.
But no one else was in the room.
Nope. And then things get really weird. Nellie notices the landing window is wide open. She swore she'd closed it before bed.
Okay, that's not good.
So she decides to sleep in Marie's room to keep an eye on her. And that's when things take a seriously scary turn. Marie wakes up, obviously scared, nudges her mom. Nellie opens her eyes. And there's this huge, shadowy figure standing in the room. Part man, part beast, she said.
Hold on, part man, part beast, like a...
I know, right? The BBC report just says half man, half beast, but the YouTube video goes into more detail. It says the lower half looked human, but the head was like a sheep or a ram with claws and hooves.
Are you kidding me?
And it gets worse.
Yeah.
This thing reaches out and touches Nellie's leg.
Oh, my God, no.
Yeah, and that's when she screams, loud enough to wake her husband, Isaac, and even the Robsons next door. Isaac runs in, finds Nellie totally hysterical. They search the whole house, but nothing. Front door's wide open, though.
No sign of the thing, just an open door. Chillin'.
Totally. And the Robsons, they hear the commotion, obviously worried, come over to see what happened. They hear Nellie's story, see the fear in her eyes, and her daughters, too. It obviously shook them all up pretty bad.
Imagine witnessing something like that.
Yeah, it'd mess you up. And then, get this. Just a few days after this whole nightmare, the priest from the abbey returns the Stoneheads to the Robson boys. Said he couldn't find out much about them, except that they seemed old.
So the heads are back, and then what? Back to normal.
Not even close. As soon as those heads are back in the house, more weird stuff starts happening, this time to the Robsons. Classic poltergeist activity, according to the YouTube video.
Poltergeist, like moving stuff, making noises.
The works. Started small. The heads, the boys put them on a shelf in the living room, right? But every morning, they'd be moved, like turned to face the garden where they were found.
Freaky, like they wanted to go back.
Right. And then they started hearing the water taps turning on in the middle of the night.
Must have been driving them crazy.
Colin's father thought it was one of the kids messing around, but he never caught anyone. And their oldest daughter, Wendy, she came home from her honeymoon, found everyone all worked up about these heads. So she decides to try and put a stop to it. Puts the heads under her bed.
Under the bed. Bold move.
I know, right? But guess what?
They moved again.
Yep. Somehow, those heads got out of there. And it didn't stop there. The YouTube video goes on and on. Things breaking for no reason, pictures falling off walls, a mirror somehow placed on top of a frying pan without breaking anything.
Okay, that's just weird.
I know, right? It's like his heads were playing games. They even said ornaments were flying across the room. The whole family felt like they were never alone in their own house.
Ugh, that's the worst feeling. You'd be jumping at shadows.
And it wasn't just inside the house either. This one's strange. This big flower grew in the exact spot where they dug up the heads. But here's the thing. From inside the house, it looked like it was glowing, like it had a light inside. But when they went outside, it looked normal.
Glowing? Now that's spooky, like something out of a movie.
Totally. And then there was the crying. They started hearing a baby crying, coming from the garden at night. Never heard it before they found the heads.
Okay, I'd be moving out at that point, no question.
I think I would too. So, with all this going on, you can imagine the story starts hitting the local papers, then national news.
Makes sense. Strange artifacts, poltergeists, neighbors seeing half-sheep, half-man creatures. That's headline news right there.
Exactly. And here's where the timeline gets a little fuzzy. Different accounts say different things. But we know that a Reverend Peter Moff, or Moof, as the YouTube video says, which always cracks me up.
Moof, yeah.
He contacts the Robsons. Says Dr. Ann Ross, this expert in Celtic history and archaeology. She's going to be in the area giving a lecture. Super interested in seeing the heads.
Celtic history, huh? So maybe those heads were old, like really old.
That was the thinking. Apparently, some Celtic tribes were really into heads. They thought enemy heads held spiritual power or something, even worshipped them. So maybe the Robsons' garden was like an old Celtic shrine.
Wow, now that's a thought.
I know, right? So Colin Robson remembers his mom, Jenny, telling Reverend Moff he could take the heads. They were kind of done with all the weirdness, to be honest.
Understandable. Who needs creepy heads causing chaos in their house?
Exactly. So that's how Dr. Ann Ross ends up with the Hexham Heads. Takes them all the way back to her home in Southampton.
From Hexham to Southampton, those heads were getting around.
And Dr. Ross, She was a serious researcher. She'd seen a lot of weird stuff, I'm sure. But even she had some freaky experiences with those heads.
What? Even with all her experience?
Yeah. The YouTube video says as soon as she got them, there was this bad feeling around them. She even locked them up in her study straight away. And then 1 or 2 nights later, around 2 a.m., she wakes up. Freezing cold. The room felt like ice.
Okay, that's creepy right there. Sudden cold, middle of the night. Not a good sign.
Definitely not. And she gets this feeling that something's wrong. Really wrong. And she sees it, standing by the wardrobe in her bedroom. A figure. In the shadows.
What kind of figure?
Well, there was a little light coming in from the hallway, so she could kind of see it. Tall, about 6 feet, stooping a bit. The bottom half looked human, like it had legs. But the top half,
The top half. Don't leave me hanging.
it was like a wolf, covered in this thick black fur. And this is where that BBC report audio is amazing, because you can hear her describing it on the show. She says, and I quote, "It was half animal and half man. The upper part I would have said was a wolf, and the lower part was human." Chilling stuff.
It's like something straight out of a horror movie. A werewolf in her bedroom.
Right. And get this, the creature realizes she's looking at it, and it just calmly walks out of the bedroom. Instead of waking her husband, she follows it.
She follows it. Why?
I know, it's weird. She said she felt drawn to it like she had to follow. She's walking down the stairs, hears these soft footsteps ahead of her. Then she sees it again down the hallway.
So she saw it twice.
Yeah, and that's what snaps her out of it. The fear hits her, and she runs back upstairs, wakes her husband, Richard Fruffman.
Richard Fruffman. Get your name?
The YouTube video says he was an archaeologist too, so you'd think he'd be open to the idea of weird stuff. But he was pretty skeptical at first. Still, they searched the whole house, top to bottom. Nothing. No wolfman, no signs of forced entry.
So was she dreaming? A nightmare brought on by the heads, maybe?
Maybe. But here's the thing. She wasn't the only one who saw something strange while those heads were in the house.
Oh, no. Who else?
A few days later, they come home, and their teenage daughter, Bernice, is totally freaked out. Pale as a ghost, shaking like a leaf. Turns out, she had her own encounter.
Oh, man. Poor kid. What happened?
So, she gets home from school, starts up the stairs, and right there, above her on the stairs, is this huge black figure.
Another one. What did it look like this time?
Bernice said it was definitely some kind of animal, not human at all. And this thing, it charges at her, but at the last second, jumps over the banister, lands in the hallway, and runs off.
Jumps over the banister. Was this thing part monkey, too?
I know, it's crazy, right? And just like her mom, Bernice feels this urge to follow it, but it just vanishes. She collapses, totally terrified.
So 2 sightings, both describing something inhuman.
Yeah, and it gets even weirder. After that, the family kept hearing these soft, paw-like sounds in the hallway, almost like whatever Bernice saw was being replayed somehow. They'd see glimpses of a dark figure out of the corner of their eyes. And the door to Dr. Ross's study, where the heads were kept, would slam open for no reason.
Empty room every time.
Every time. And this is where the BBC Nationwide report really gets interesting. They have the audio of Dr. Ross describing everything, and you can tell it really got to people back then. Tony Pollard, he remembers watching it as a kid, and he says they even put up a trigger warning before they showed the segment about the wolf creature, in case there were little kids watching.
Trigger warning. For real. That's intense.
Yeah, and Pollard remembers them flashing a picture of Oliver Reed from that movie, Curse of the Werewolf, right when Dr. Ross is talking about it, jumping over the banister.
Oh, man. Talk about adding fuel to the fire. That would freak anyone out.
Totally. And Bernice, she said the creature was, quote, as near a werewolf as anything that she could imagine. So we're not talking about vague shadows here. These are detailed descriptions from multiple people in the same house.
Credible witnesses, seeing some pretty terrifying stuff. But like with most paranormal stories, there are always skeptics, right? People trying to find a more down-to-earth explanation.
Always. And the YouTube video goes into one of those alternative theories. This guy, Des Craigie, a lorry driver, he contacted the newspapers, said he made those heads himself, like 16 years before the Robsons found them.
He made them as a joke.
Well, he said they were gifts for his daughter.
Yeah.
Said his father had lived in the Robsons' house and they'd been there for 30 years, so he claimed he just took some random stones and mortar, rolled them up, carved faces into them. Said his daughter used the foil from Penguin chocolate bars for the eyes.
Penguin chocolate bar eyes? That's oddly specific.
I know, right? And he said he actually made 3 heads, not 2, but the Robsons only found 2. Said he thought the whole paranormal thing was a big laugh.
So just a prankster trying to get his 15 minutes of fame?
Maybe. But Dr. Ross wasn't so sure. She wanted proof. So she asked Craigie to make another head, a replica, see if he could really do it. Because even if those heads weren't ancient, they weren't exactly crude either. They had details that matched up with real Celtic artifacts. Plus, after what she went through, she probably thought those heads had some kind of power, regardless of who made them.
That makes sense. If you've seen what she's seen, you wouldn't dismiss it so easily. So, did he do it? Make another head?
He did, but people couldn't agree on whether it looked anything like the originals. And the YouTube video talks about this researcher, Paul Screeton. He looked into Des Craigie, found out he had a bit of a reputation for pranks.
A joker, huh? So maybe he was telling the truth.
There's even this photo floating around, allegedly, of Craigie holding the original heads. But no one knows for sure if it's real or when it was taken.
Yeah.
So, still a lot of questions there.
Lots of questions. And this whole thing with Colin making a plaster head right before they found the stone heads.
Yeah, the YouTube video brings up a really interesting thought. What if Craigie did make 3 heads, but they weren't the same ones the Robsons found? Like, what if there was something about that garden, the soil, the energy that was influencing people to make heads? Almost like a faded memory or a creative impulse tied to that place.
Okay, that's trippy. Like the garden itself was making people create these things.
It's a thought, right?
Yeah.
And it gets more complicated. Geologists who looked at the heads had different opinions on how old they were. One said 1,800 years old, definitely Celtic. Another said, nope, way more recent.
So we don't even know for sure how old they are.
Nope. And there's another theory in the YouTube video about Nellie Dodd seeing that creature. They suggest maybe it was just a drunk guy with a sheep on his back, and she mistook him for a monster in the dark.
A drunk guy with a sheep, really?
Yeah, I know. Sounds a bit far-fetched. And the video points out there's no evidence to support it. Plus, Nellie's description was pretty detailed. Doesn't really sound like a guy with a sheep.
Right. And what about those later sightings at the abattoir? Another half-sheep, half-man creature, they said.
Yeah, but those came after the Hexham Heads story was already big news. Probably just people adding to the legend, I'd say. So that theory doesn't really hold water.
Okay, so we've got confusing origins, mixed opinions, and some pretty spooky events. What did Dr. Ross do with all this?
Well, she had those creepy encounters in her own home. Conflicting info about where the heads came from, and those unsettling feelings. So she decided to send the heads to Newcastle's Museum of Antiquities. Get them out of her house.
Good idea. Get rid of the bad vibes.
Exactly. And get this, as soon as those heads were gone, all the weird stuff in her house stopped. Just like that.
No more Wolfman, no more cold chills, no more doors slamming, just peace and quiet.
Pretty much. It's like those heads were the source of all the trouble.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Like they were carrying something with them. Some kind of energy, maybe.
Definitely. So the heads go to the Newcastle Museum, then they end up with all these different institutions. Finally, they end up with Dom Robbins. He's the guy who made the whole stone tape theory famous.
The stone tape theory. Refresh my memory.
Basically, the idea is that objects, especially stone ones, can absorb and record events, emotions, like a videotape. And sometimes, under the right conditions, those recordings can be played back. And that's what causes ghosts or paranormal activity.
Whoa, so like those heads were imprinted with some kind of ancient, creepy event.
That's what Robbins thought. He said he didn't see any creatures or anything, but he felt a really strong vibe around the heads. He even said he felt like their eyes were following him around the room.
Oh, okay, that's unsettling. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Right. So Robbins thinks the heads captured something from the past, maybe something really traumatic, and all these weird sightings were like echoes of that event.
Spiritual echoes, huh? That's actually kind of poetic in a creepy way.
I know, right? But the story's not over yet. Robbins, he gives the heads to this other paranormal guy, Frank Hyde. Thought maybe he could do more research on them.
Another paranormal enthusiast. This Hyde guy must have been pretty fascinated by them.
Yeah. Promised to keep Robbins updated on what he found. But then, things take a turn for the worse again.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Hyde gets into this bad car accident. He's okay, thankfully, but after that, Robbins can't get a hold of him. Years go by, and Robbins tries and tries to find out what happened to the heads, but nothing. Hyde just vanishes, and the heads go with him.
Vanishes, like completely disappears.
Gone without a trace.
So that's where we're left, with a whole bunch of unanswered questions. As the YouTube video says, the big ones are, where did those heads really come from? What was it about them that caused all that weirdness? And what happened to them after Hyde disappeared?
So many mysteries, right? It's hard to know what to believe after all these years. Memories fade, especially if you were a kid when it happened. And we've seen how different accounts can clash.
But that's part of what makes this whole Hexham Heads thing so fascinating. Despite all the doubts, all the unknowns, it just keeps drawing people in. And finding that BBC footage, well, that just kicked things up a notch.
For sure. It's a story that really gets under your skin, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Folklore, potential paranormal activity, skeptical debates, and just this human need to understand the unknown.
Absolutely. It's got it all. So we've gone through a lot today. We started with these two curious boys digging up those heads, talked about the terrifying experiences of Nellie Dodd and Dr. Ross and her family. We even dove into the claims of Des Craigie, the skeptical explanations, and that whole stone tape theory. And of course, we can't forget the final mystery, the heads vanishing along with Frank Hyde. It's a wild ride from beginning to end.
A wild ride is right. So here's something for you listeners to ponder. Think back on everything we've talked about. The stories, the theories, the unanswered questions. What part of the Hexham Heads mystery sticks with you the most? Is it the eyewitness accounts, the possibility of a hoax, or the idea that those stones were holding onto some kind of energy? Or maybe you have a completely different explanation.
Yeah, what other possibilities are out there? That's what keeps us coming back to these mysteries.
Exactly. So if this deep dive has sparked your interest, if you're hooked on the Hexham Heads now, I encourage you, do your own research. Find that BBC report if you can, read more accounts, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find a piece of the puzzle that everyone else has missed. Who knows, you might even crack the case wide open.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
It sure would. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of the Hexham Heads.
Until next time, keep exploring the unexplained.
And remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes it's just out there, waiting to be discovered.
Happy hunting, folks.